Hi, welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. But tonight's short take asks the question: will Chuck Schumer play hardball, or will he just do some more Kabuki? Well, we're just going to have to see about that. But I don't think the indications are very good for hardball. So Dave Sirota had a piece he published in Jacobin. Actually, today. He starts off by telling us the first rule of Democratic Fight Club should be, don't ever do what Mitch McConnell wants you to do. Yeah, I agree with that. So he says, today we'll see if Senate Democrats understand that rule yet. They have a rare opportunity to use their power to try to complicate Senator McConnell's plan to confirm Donald Trump's third Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett. Whether or not Dems decide to use that power will tell us exactly how serious they are about blocking Trump's court pick. I mean, they've been making a lot of noise about it, right? Chuck Schumer has been telling us he's going to use every tool in his toolbox. Every tool in his toolbox. He's going to use that. He's going to do that. He's going to do everything he possibly can to block Trump's court pick. Anyway, they're going to tell us how serious they are about doing that and making sure that millions of Americans get some relief during the economic crisis and winning crucial 2020 races in the upcoming elections. And Dave gives us a summary of what's going on. Democrats have the power to potentially block Senator McConnell's attempt to maintain control of Senate proceedings in order to keep their Supreme Court confirmation plan on track. His scheme was outlined in a McConnell press release just yesterday saying he wants to secure a consent agreement to temporarily adjourn the Senate. Now, keep in mind, everybody, that a consent agreement requires unanimous consent. Unanimous consent. So every senator, every Democrat, even one Democratic senator, could block the temporary adjournment being requested by McConnell. So only one Democratic senator has to understand that the first rule is not to do what Mitch McConnell wants. But anyway, the reason why McConnell wants this adjournment resolution is because if the chamber is kept open, if the Senate is kept open, it might allow Democrats to use normal process in the Senate, the normal legislative process, to complicate the Republican plans while Republican senators are either campaigning for re-election or under COVID quarantine. Remember, 3 Republican senators have already tested positive for COVID and are supposed to be quarantining and isolating. And there's also evidence that a number of other GOP senators could have been exposed to the virus because they had luncheons with at least one of the GOP senators who had since tested positive. But specifically Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. Adjournment also would allow Republicans to stall any potential progress on a pandemic relief package for the next 2 weeks. If Democrats are able to vote down the adjournment resolution, they could use their leverage to demand an adjournment resolution that defers the confirmation hearings and moves forward the pandemic relief package that Nancy Pelosi wants. At the very least, they could force the Republican senators to leave the campaign trail and stay in Washington to cast procedural votes, which would only help Democratic Senate candidates in their races. So the key thing to understand here is that Mitch wants the resolution for adjournment because he doesn't want to force Republican senators to fly back to Washington to actually cast their votes. And because of both the election campaign schedule and the COVID outbreak, he doesn't have a clear sense of how many could actually get back to Washington in time. After all, they might be down with COVID. Okay, they might be too far away to make it back sufficiently fast. That uncertainty potentially gives Democrats the power to block the McConnell resolution to adjourn. As long as a majority of senators present in the chamber at a critical time are Democrats, they could vote it down. So, if Democrats deny McConnell unanimous consent, then vulnerable GOP senators in key battleground states are going to have to leave the campaign trail because the Republicans would potentially need every vote they have, while 3 of the party senators are out with COVID. So they only got 50 votes now. If Democrats gather enough of their caucus to the Senate floor, they may be able to vote down an adjournment resolution on a roll call vote because among the 50 votes they have, there are 2 votes from Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, who have already said that they don't want to confirm Amy Coney Barrett before the election. They want the election to decide the question of whether she's going to be confirmed. So they might not be willing to support a procedural vote to give Mitch what he wants, especially not Susan Collins, who's under deep threat in Maine from Sarah Gideon. So in that critical situation, then, Democrats would be able to deny adjournment and use their leverage to demand that any adjournment resolution include provisions putting off the Supreme Court hearings until after the election. They could also maybe get out of the Republicans as part of the resolution a commitment to move along the pandemic relief bill. And Zephyr Teachout has tweeted every single Democratic senator needs to be ready to deny Mitch McConnell adjournment tomorrow unless that adjournment takes Barrett off the table. And she says, make McConnell produce 48 senators. Don't take his word he has the votes. Protect America. Zephyr Teachout is right. And Zephyr Teachout should run for the Senate in New York as soon as she can. Maybe primary Chuck Schumer the next time that gutless wonder stands. To be sure, Republicans' reckless behavior in creating a COVID superspreader event, the White House has turned the Capitol into a potential coronavirus hot zone right now. And that, of course, is even more reason to halt the entire process. That means that for Democratic senators going into the hot zone to try to procedurally stall the nomination isn't without some risk. Though they could show up with masks and PPE, personal protective equipment, and then the risks would be far less. But Zephyr Teachout notes millions of Americans are facing far bigger day-to-day risks in their jobs and get paid far less money than U.S. senators do to take those risks. She also argues that lawmakers going to the Senate floor is a risk that must be weighed against the risk of a permanent 6-3 conservative Supreme Court majority making laws for the rest of our lives. And she says that essential workers show up every day, nurses show up every day, even even every Democratic senator needs to show up. Nurses show up every day. Every Democratic senator needs to show up tomorrow to vote. She tweeted, quote, the ACA and women's rights and LGBTQ rights and voting rights and labor rights and anti-corruption and freedom versus big corporations is at stake. And she got a lot of support from David Seagal from Rhode Island, who basically backed her and referred to the countless doctors, nurses, custodians, etc., who've put themselves at much greater risk for months. And but Dave Sirota, after referring to Mitch McConnell's quest for raw power, goes on to say, today Democrats have a rare opportunity to shift the dynamic. They can start behaving as if they understand that Jed Bartlett-style decorum is not going to stop a Senate Majority Leader flying an undead, blue, fire-breathing dragon. Of course, gumming up Senator McConnell's adjournment resolution is not a singular panacea, but it can be one move in a larger series of moves that makes it as difficult as possible for Republicans to get that way. Playing for time in such a fluid environment is critical. Certainly is. So 2 weeks ago, Democrats were scoffing at the progressives who were saying they really had to fight to try to stop or stall the Supreme Court nomination. But 14 days later, reality bit, or intervened, as Dave Sirota says. Republicans have temporarily lost at least 3 senators who have COVID, and potentially more are self-quarantining. And not only that, but of course, Trump is now desperate to get a relief bill passed, and he's willing to tweet at the Republicans in Congress to get it done. And Dave then says, that underscores an important point. Fighting hard and playing for time always has value because circumstances can shift. That is especially true during a pandemic. That is why you should always fight on principles, even when the odds are stacked against you, because sometimes a reality changes the game. And the point is, it's still changing the game. It's not over. Trump went home tonight. He went home to the White House. They're going to try to get him healthy there, but he's not healthy now. He's just had COVID. You don't get to walk out of the hospital when you're seriously enough ill to have COVID and immediately step into your schedule. Trump was suffering from fatigue due to COVID. He is going to continue to suffer from fatigue. He's going to continue to find it hard to work. And by that, I mean he's going to continue to find it hard to pressure Republicans in Congress. He's going to continue to find it hard to push for Amy Coney Barrett. He's going to continue to find it hard to fight through a campaign. He's going to have to do it, but from the White House. At this point, it's not going to be easy for him. And Dave finishes his piece by saying, but Mitch McConnell understands that truism, which is why he is always using every tool at his disposal to push his extremist agenda. He understands there is always a value in fighting. It's time for Democrats to understand that too. Specifically, it's time for Chuck Schumer to understand that too. It's time for him to stop the Kabuki and to fight for real. And he says today they have a chance to do what Mitch McConnell would do if the roles were reversed. The question is, will they? And the answer to the question is already known. It's already known, in spite of the fact that An article in Common Dreams earlier today said, quoted Chuck Schumer as demanding Senate Republicans immediately halt their, quote, absurd and dangerous rush to confirm Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court after reporting indicated GOP advisors are advocating a plan under which COVID-infected senators could vote on President Donald Trump's nominee from the chamber's visitors gallery. Huh. And, of course, Schumer said, the Republican leadership has truly lost touch with reality if it's contemplating marching COVID-stricken members to the Senate to rush through a Supreme Court nominee who could strip health care from 20 million Americans. Said, make no mistake about it, Americans are seeing the similarities between Republicans' willingness to put their colleagues and staff at risk in pursuit of power and their willingness to strip health care from tens of millions of Americans in pursuit of their ideological goals, unquote. Tough talk, right? According to the Washington Post, outside Republican advisors working on the Barrett confirmation, quote, have suggested a system in which the Senate Judiciary Committee vote would be held in the Senate chamber with ill senators voting from the visitors' galleries above the floor so that they can maintain distance. The Post noted that GOP aides, quote, have yet to discuss that option. For now, they added, quote again, Republicans are promising to press forward, virus or not, healthy or infected, unquote. Heroic of them, isn't it? Heroic of them. There's such big heroes trying to deny health care, not just to the 20 million Americans, but also to the 130 million Americans who have pre-existing conditions, which if the Affordable Care Act is repealed, pre-existing conditions are not going to be covered anymore, right? So we're talking about 150 million Americans potentially losing their coverage under the ACA. These big heroes are trying to make it possible for that to happen. At least 6 Republican senators, 4 of whom are members of the Judiciary Committee, are currently quarantining after testing positive for coronavirus or coming into contact with someone who did. Nevertheless, the Republicans say they're going to move forward with the October 12 hearings of the Judiciary Committee. They're going to still maintain their cavalier approach to COVID-19, and they brushed aside any suggestion that the confirmation process should be pushed back. And Tom Cotton said, they could appear in the Senate chamber for the final confirmation vote on Barrett, even if they're still infected with the highly contagious virus that has killed more than 200,009 people. Actually, it's killed more right now. As of right now, it has killed more than, let me see. Guess we'll take a second to see. According to the Worldometer site, the fatalities in the United States as of now are 215,032. According to them, it's not 209,000. It's 215,032. So you should know that. So, Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican in Wisconsin, who announced Saturday morning he tested positive for the coronavirus, said in a radio appearance Monday that, quote, if we have to go in and vote, I've already told the leadership I'll go in a moon suit, unquote. Quote, I would certainly try to find a way, making sure that everybody was safe, unquote, said Johnson. Quote again, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. Well, not always, Mr. Johnson. Not if you haven't just contracted COVID, but if you're deep into a high fever or something like that, there may not be a way. I wouldn't want to wish that on anybody, of course, but that could happen. And then, Ron Johnson, there's not going to be a way. And Dave Sirota said, imagine if Democratic senators were this committed to stopping Barrett's nomination. Imagine if they were willing to go into the Senate in spacesuits to stop this, he added. That's what we need right now. That's what it's going to take. Of course, our beloved Democrats would rather play Kabuki. So, with all the progressives calling on them to deny consent and oppose any adjournment on the resolution that doesn't actually delay the confirmation vote until after November 3rd, what did they do? What did the Democratic senators who so badly want to win this election do? What they did today is grant McConnell's request. Not one of them stood up and denied the request for unanimous consent. They gave McConnell what he wanted. After all the kabuki, they gave McConnell what he wanted. Guess what I think? I think they're useless. We need to primary as many of them as we can. We need to get them out of here as quickly as we can. They don't have the guts of a frightened little mouse being chased by a cat. They're little mice being chased by big cats. So that's this progressive short take. I'll be back again with what may be a little shorter short take, but I'll be back again shortly. Thank you very much for coming.